Hello and welcome to Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. One of my guests on the show today will talk about a book he's written about relationships and how to help them out. My other guest will talk about relationships, but of various sorts and through the lyrical language of poetry. And we'll hear words put to music by a talented local singer-songwriter. Thanks for joining me. And now my first guest. John Sullivan has been giving workshops and helping couples improve their relationships for over 30 years. John has a master's degree in psychology and has been trained as a relationship therapist. The skills he teaches couples include using safe conversations, keeping the space between safe, amplifying the positives, and making an appointment for anything negative. Sounds really interesting, doesn't it? Well, John's here now to talk with us about his book, Dream Relationship. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Ronnie.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you know, there were so many things as I was reading through this book that I want to talk to you about, and, a gajillion questions. But let's find out a little bit about you. Now, you used to be a Basilian priest.
I was. I was taught at Assumption. I was a high school teacher, and then.
So you're from Windsor?
No, actually, I was a border at Assumption. I was from the States, and my dad died, and I ended up as a boarder at Assumption, and then joined the Basilians, and then went back to Assumption and taught.
Yeah. Why? Why? Was there influence because of going to the school?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. It was a way to serve, and you saw guys that you admired, and then it was a way to serve.
Right.
Anyway, so I went back to Assumption. I taught and I coached hockey, basketball, or not basketball, but football, track, anything. And then I ended up coaching the high school or the college hockey team at St. Clair, which was a fun deal. That was way back when all the schools had teams, so it was fun. It was a good time.
No, but you left the priesthood.
I did, because as you know or may know, that as a Catholic priest you can't be married.
Right.
I met my wife. We left the priesthood, got married, but I believe that as a married person, I minister better to couples than as a celibate priest. And so it's still ministry, but just it's different. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could have a lot of conversations about that.
We could.
And I totally agree. But that
never
mind. We'll leave that for now. So you said you got married, and you married Crystal.
Yes.
And you and Crystal went to Africa.
We did. We spent 6 years in Zambia, which is Central Africa, and then came back in 1984, I think.
But what were you doing in Zambia?
We taught for 3 years at a mission school, and then for 3 years we worked in two different national programs. One was development education, tying faith to development or clean water, whatever. And then we also both worked with youth in something called Christian Life Communities.
So did all of your training as a priest, did that sort of overlay a lot of what you were doing?
Absolutely. Always. Oh. It's funny looking back, because I have sort of these different lives, but it could be the coaching or the priesthood or the teaching or the counseling. They all come together to help people. And sometimes you have to pull out one little piece to help this person, but another piece comes from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Our kids were both born in Zambia too, which is another whole story. You could talk to Crystal about that.
That's pretty cool.
It was.
Okay, now we're here to talk about your book,
I know.
Dream Relationship. Why'd you write this? I think you had a personal reason.
I did. So I've trained with Dr. Harville Hendricks. He's the creator of Imago Relationship Therapy. And I've used that for 30 years. But he wrote this, actually, I can put it on here, I guess, maybe, but he wrote this book, Getting the Love You Want, A Guide for Couples. He wrote it in 1988. And then he republished it 2008, a 20th anniversary edition. And then he republished it again 2018, a 30th anniversary edition. So he sold over 4 million copies of that, and it's now in 53 countries. I was actually the first international guy he trained, but now it's in 53 countries. So it's not just me, I tell people. It's just a system that's helped a lot of people. But the reason I got involved so he wrote the book in 88. In 89, my wife and I separated. We'd been married for 15 years at the time, and it was over. We had 2 kids, or meeting regarding the kids. And it was really my wife, Crystal, who read the book first. And one of the points Harville makes is that what often happens in our culture is we get rid of our partner, but we keep the problem.
I think that is such a great line. When I read that, I underlined it in bold.
Well, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, well, let's not waste that 15-year history. Let's figure out what didn't work so we don't repeat the pattern. Anyway, 4 months later, we were back together. 2 months later, we went down to Chicago to a workshop Harville gave. And I said, this guy makes a ton of sense. So I went to New York and trained with him. 2 years later, went back to train to the workshop. But
and we should say that you and Crystal have now been together for
45 this year. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
It's great.
So that is certainly...
So it's very personal for me. It's not just theory. Yeah.
And it really says a lot about the way the way this works for relationships. Yeah. And you also...
On my business card, I have the tools are available in today's world to have the relationship of dreams. And I truly believe that. But there's some things you can do and some things you can't do.
Right. Now, you call yourself a coach rather than a counselor.
Well, therapy and counseling, I can get philosophical here, but Freud influenced our culture immensely. And
Did he ever?
Yeah. But the connotation is, you're on the couch, he's back here free associating, or you're free associating, but the connotation is very clear. You're the patient, I'm the doctor. There's something wrong with you, I'll fix it. Mm-hmm. Whereas a coach, and like I said, they're not to coaching, but typically there's nothing wrong with my guys, but sometimes what they're doing is not working, or not working as well as they want. And I think the same is true of relationships. There's nothing wrong with people other than, yes, we're all been out of shape a bit, but sometimes what they're doing is not working, I believe.
And now you have a 3-step process. And what I found was really interesting is that you start with safety, but you also talk about something called the old brain, right? The old brain. Talk about that, because it's fascinating.
I don't know if you can pick this up, but there's a picture of the brain we've all seen. So here, hopefully Veronica and I are using our cerebral cortex. I don't know if we are or not, but anyway.
With any luck.
And there's a limbic system, and then there's this brain stem, which we all have. And we share that with all animals. Birds, fish, mammals, reptiles, all have an old brain. I mean, I'm not the scientist, but they say it's all animals have it, and it's 500 million years old. You're not going to change it. And its main concern is to keep us safe. Is it safe or is it dangerous? If it's dangerous, it'll defend itself. It's 500 million years. Mm-hmm. And I'm not knocking the old brain. If I'm out driving on the 401, I have to be pretty well alert. But I don't want to run my marriage by it. We're creatures of habit. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I was at another meeting, and this guy came up to me, and he says, I'm such a creature of habit, because he usually sits there, and now he was sitting here. And I still play hockey. And so there's 20 of us. These 10 are in this room. These 10 are in this room. Nobody ever switches. And when you go in the dressing room, this guy sits here, I sit there, this guy sits
It's a bit of OCD.
Well, I don't know, but we're just creatures of habit.
Yes.
And then the other thing was at a networking meeting, this person made the point that 80% apparently of when people go to a networking meeting, which is where you go to meet people, 80% of people sit with somebody they know.
Yes,
because
which defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah, but it's comfortable. Yeah. So we go with what's comfortable, what we know, and we're creatures of habit. Mm-hmm. So it's unconscious, but when you're out looking for a partner, I think Harville's great insight was, don't be surprised if you partner with somebody who's you feel comfortable with. It's unconscious. It's not conscious. So 2 questions I ask couples sometimes. I could ask you. Don't answer it though. Don't. Why are you with Chris? Why am I with Chris? My Chris. Mm-hmm. Why is anybody with anybody? I mean, think about it. You met many guys. He met many girls. Why you two? It's not a bad question, is it?
No.
But the other question is, and I will ask you, can you remember when you first met him?
I can.
Everybody can. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but I can remember 50 years ago when I met Chris. So what is going on? And I think unconsciously we just remember something or we recognize something that's familiar. But you have to be conscious because again, like I think Harville has cracked the code on this because once you realize that you're going to be with somebody whose needs you can't meet right now, but it's a chance to regain your wholeness.
And the space between needs to be safe. Well,
we were talking earlier, and I've been rereading that new book because I'm trying to trace his thinking between 2008, 2018, because there has been an evolution, and one of the evolutions is the importance of this space between. Quantum physics says everything's just energy, and so it's an energy field. But if that energy field is not safe, why would I go into it? And we have sayings like you can cut the tension with a knife, and so I have the third part is the 4 skills, and one of the skills is no negativity. In a conscious relationship, you want to remove all negativity, no blame, shame, or criticism. And especially in that space between. Because think about it. I think in the romantic love stage, when people fall in love, the space between is pretty positive. It's fun. It's, But I think what happens, especially if people are unconscious, is they start nipping away at that. It's not the big things. Usually it's a little shot here, a little zing there, a little criticism there, roll your eyes, walk away. And all of a sudden that space becomes less negative. And if it goes toxic, who wants to go in a toxic space? And so then people go this way. So my whole goal with couples is to help them see that to keep this space positive. And the caveat is, it's the person on the receiving end who determines whether it's negative or not. Because I could say, well, I was just kidding. But if it hurts you, I need to stop.
And you hear that all the time. But that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
You're taking it all wrong. Yeah. But it's the way I received it, right?
And so then that takes us to the next really important skill. You have to be able to talk to each other in a safe way about that. Exactly what you said. And so, and two people, if they can talk in a safe way, they'll sort things out.
We could talk forever, but
we're not over yet, are we?
The time flies. Isn't it amazing? So
I did a lot of talking.
What's next for you? Very, very briefly. So where can people buy your book?
Right now you have to go on my website, John Sullivan Counseling, and you can buy it there.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know there's so much wonderful stuff in that book.
Thank you.
And I never realized that there were, these are simple tools that we see in front of us every day. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It's like hockey. There's certain things you do and certain things you can't do. It's not rocket science. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ron.
And now, here's the music I promised you. Jacqueline Caderet is a local singer-songwriter, and here's a music video of her performing one of her original songs, Good Grief. She's accompanied on guitar by Denny Bastarash.
I loved a man who was strong and kind. He's got a story in my mind. Long and painful journey, my friend. Just never ever seems to come to an end. Oh, good grief, Charlie Brown, tell me what has got you down. Not really sure how you manage the loss. Oh my, what an expensive cost. I've known you for a long while. It isn't often that I see you smile. Oh, good grief, Charlie Brown, tell me what has got you down. Sometimes you know that life ain't fair. Injustices are everywhere. Here we go again. What could possibly go wrong now? Tell me, please tell me how. Your job, your kids, your wife, your life drag you through the darkest night. Drag you through the river of pain. Somehow you come up for air again. Oh, good grief, Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown, tell me what has got you down.
That was local singer-songwriter Jacqueline Caderet, accompanied on guitar by Denny Bastarash. My next guest is Samantha Barra. In 2019, she was named the City of Windsor's first Youth Poet Laureate. She's a recent graduate of the University of Windsor with an honours degree in English language and literature. Samantha is a regular participant in Windsor Slam poetry events, capturing the title of Grand Champion in 2015. Samantha has represented Windsor in multiple national poetry competitions. Black Moss Press will be publishing her first book of poetry. Welcome to Scribes and Songsters,
Thank
Samantha.
you. I'm so excited to be here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That must be very exciting to be the first.
Yeah, it's an honor. In Windsor, I'm so glad that we just have this program finally. So
that is just terrific. Were you surprised?
I was very surprised, actually. I wasn't expecting it, but like I said, it's an honor, and I'm surrounded by so many talented poets. So it's great.
Yeah. So let's take a journey to you being named Youth Poet Laureate.
Sure.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Leamington, actually. I attended a Catholic elementary school and a grade school, and then I moved to Windsor when I was 18 to study English at the University of Windsor. And I sort of just fell in love with the city and haven't left since. So.
Well, I'm sure they'll be very happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your school days.
Mm-hmm.
What were your influences? Who influenced you to poetry or writing?
So I think I've been writing ever since I could. I've been writing poetry ever since I could write, but I never really saw it as a viable career option until I got into high school, and you just need that one good English teacher, to kind of put you on the path. And then I started taking writing a little bit seriously, but it was a little bit hard for me to find my path. And then when I stumbled upon spoken word, it was an immediate fit, and I felt like I had found my place. So I started running the Windsor Poetry Slam. We represented Windsor in a couple of national festivals. Yeah. We ranked. So that was a fun time, and I just kind of haven't stopped since.
So I'll come back and we'll talk about the slams.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first poem you ever wrote?
Oh, not specifically. I think a lot of the times you think you're not writing poetry, and then you look at old diary entries and you're just like, oh, that's all I was writing was poetry. But yeah.
Now, were you with friends who were writers, or were you sort of isolated?
No, I think for a long time, writing was like my dirty little secret. And I would hide poems under the bed, and I wouldn't talk about it with anyone. And then when I went to university, there was just everyone around me. All they wanted to do was talk about poetry. So it was great for me.
Yeah, it's liberating, isn't it?
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah.
So talk about the poetry slams. There was a time when I was getting really worried that young people had given up on poetry. But that's not the case.
Absolutely not. No. So I stumbled upon the Windsor Poetry Slam just from a Facebook ad, just accidentally. I wandered in, and it was the best time I've ever had with poetry in my life.
So take me back to that time.
Yeah. So I came in, and when I had first stumbled upon it, it was at a bar called the Fog Lounge in Windsor. I'm not sure if you've been there.
With Tom. I've been there many times.
It's wonderful, yeah. So when I stumbled in there, it was maybe its second or third slam. And so there was, a very small community, but I fell in love with it, and I just watched it grow. And eventually I got to take over the role as running it. And that was
What
wonderful.
did you see that night? What did you hear?
I think what struck me most was just the complete honesty and vulnerability of everybody on that stage. I mean, a lot of the times when you go to poetry readings, people focus on how poetry looks on a page. Mm-hmm. But when you focus on how your voice presents, it's a whole different experience. And I saw just a wealth of untapped talent. And I couldn't believe how many young poets in the city were just amazingly talented. So it was so refreshing to see.
Now, were there themes to this poetry? Was there an angst, or was it very general?
I think the good thing about slam is that people will write about anything. And so maybe people have a conception oh, it's very dark and heavy. Mm-hmm. But I've laughed, the hardest at some slams, and you hear a lot of very poignant and important things. And that's what I wanted to be hearing about, was things that concerned me and things that I thought were important.
Do they also reveal some very personal things about themselves?
Absolutely, yeah. But I also believe that all poetry does that. So
yes.
It's great to see it on a stage and for people to just be so open and honest. And it's a very supportive community. So that helps a lot too.
Mm-hmm. So. Tell me what is personal to you to write about. What are some of those things that you want to get out?
Yeah, sure. So a big motivator for me to write is to kind of discover and learn more about being Lebanese. My mother and father came over here at different points of their life from Lebanon. And being an immigrant, especially in these times from the Middle East, there's a lot to unpack there. So I like to write about that a lot. And I like to write about just kind of the experiences of being a young woman in today's society. It's difficult, but it's important to be able to share these stories in any way that you see fit. And writing is my way.
Now, tell me about your mum, because one of your poems
Yeah.
is about your mum.
Yeah, a lot of my poems in my books are about my mom. She's very inspiring to me. So she came over from Lebanon when she was in her early 20s to marry my father. And then she had 4 kids. 3 of my brothers are a year apart. So God bless her. She had a lot to do. And I just find it so interesting, like learning about her hometown and her experience coming into, a town so small where she didn't know the language and she didn't really have a support system here yet. So it's very interesting to see how she navigates those channels.
How important is it to you to absorb your ancestry?
Oh, it's so important. It's so important. And you don't realize, how important it is until I think you're older. But, Lebanon being the state it's in now, I can't go over there and just ask. And even records in some parts don't exist because the town is so small. So really all we have are these stories that are being passed down through generation and generation. And to me, that's just such a beautiful, important thing that I don't want to see die in my lifetime or the next.
So through your work, you will help ensure that it doesn't get lost.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah. Now, before we go on, how about if you read us something?
Sure, yeah. I don't write many love poems, but this is a love poem about learning how to take symbols from a Catholic upbringing, so the church. And when you kind of are a lapsed Catholic, which on good days I'll call myself a begrudging Catholic, but I'm a lapsed Catholic. So you have to learn how to take all these symbols and make them mean something different to you. So this is a poem about me learning to love through a symbol that maybe doesn't mean what it used to. So when I say you are like a church, what I mean is you are nothing like a church. What I mean is you are what a church should have meant to me, what it means to so many. What I mean is I have seen the lonely grasp sycamore pews with a tenderness usually saved for lovers. I have seen the strong and self-assured crumble under the weight of a choir's chorus. I have seen the listless, hungry, and broken make rib cages from Bible verses, turn altars into lighthouses, make holy water from sweaty palmed parishioners. What I mean is I have been taught that sacred grounds are only made of brick and stone. Are places on maps that I can't afford to go to. They reek with forgotten prayers and offering. Everything is just out of reach. I cannot hold what I cannot see or understand. I have sipped from a chalice filled with bitter wine and never recovered. What I mean is your lips are a shrine I want to pray to every day. Your arms a resting place more comforting than any holy book, more revealing than any confessional. When I say you are like a church, what I mean is I am ready to believe in something again.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Very lovely. There's another one you wrote called Limbs. What's that about?
I think Limbs is about when you grow up Middle Eastern and you grow up Catholic, you see very conflicting images. All the paintings in a Catholic church are of Jesus. He's very pale. He's got, light features.
And he wasn't.
No. So for me, when I couldn't see, religious icons reflected accurately, I had to turn toward myself to find what was holy. So Limbs is really about me trying to find what is holy when I couldn't see it in the outside world.
Do you find that you're trying to find answers in your poetry?
Absolutely, yeah. I think when you get to a certain age, just your life is filled with questions that you think maybe will never be answered, and you have to turn to some form of outlet. So for me, my writing was very important in discovering myself, discovering the world around me, and expressing this all in a way that was I felt important.
Now, how much contact do you have with young people as the youth poet laureate?
Oh, I've been really lucky to run workshops and to do readings and to have one-on-one mentoring sessions. So it's been a really important and fun ride for me.
What's your goal out of this? What
Out
would you
of-
like to accomplish when you look back at, it's a year?
Yes, yeah.
When you look back at your year, what do you want to have accomplished?
I really want to create programs where, high schoolers can learn about the different ways they can go into the writing field. When I was growing up, I thought there was only one way to do it. And I thought you had to write, very sad short stories or very long-winded novels. But I want, people to know that there are a million ways to make it as a writer and a million avenues of discovery. And if there's not a path you like, I want people to know that you can absolutely make your own path.
Now, your first book of poetry is going to be published by Black Moss Press.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Marty Gervais, he approached me about writing a book, and I definitely wanted my first book to be by Black Moss Press. Marty's very understanding, and he knows how to work with poets. And I'm in a great position because the University of Windsor partners with Black Moss Press. So I have a bunch of, students who can work with me on my book. And it's been such a great ride to have, people similar to age in me and like editing my book and going through the process has been really, really wonderful.
How close is it to being published?
Very close. So the launch date is April 2nd. I believe that the book goes off to the printer soon. So it's very exciting.
And after this, do you have, is it just poetry that you want to write, or are you going to look broader?
Hopefully I'll look broader,
Yeah.
but right now I'm just in the honeymoon phase with poetry. I'm just so consumed by it all the time. So hopefully, I'll keep writing books and publishing books.
Well, thank you so much. I wish you all great good luck.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your year.
Thanks.
Thank you. Well, that's a wrap for another edition of Scribes and Songsters. Many thanks to my delightful guests, John Sullivan and Samantha Badaoa. Thank you to our producers, Brian Sweet and Gary Glass. Grateful thanks to Tony Toldo Jr. and the Toldo Foundation for your support. And thank you also to Neil and Tina Queering. Last thanks to you for watching. I hope you'll come back next time for another visit here on Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. See you soon.